Well, there you are, Julien. How are you? How's Paris? How's the evening?
Good morning, Max. I am doing great. I'm really glad to see you again this week. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I have an interesting problem for us to talk about. This is our third round with the mailbag, so I have a very interesting problem and no personal trauma to bring with it.
Right, so that's the new format. You have problems, but those are not your problems because you just didn't have enough problems of your own, and you had to
Right,
take on other problems from other people.
right.
Fantastic.
We're
Is
we're
that is that an anonymous tip again, or do we have someone who?
no. I actually Christina McAllister, who is one
All
of my
right.
peers here at Forrester. She's an analyst focusing on contact center and more a lot around analytics and digital and stuff like that. She shared a story, and I think this proves she's a friend of mine. It's an airline story.
Okay, yet another one. All right, perfect.
Yep. So she's in Canada, and she was flying to the United States for an event, and she got in the Uber, the car, whatever it was, and she looked down at her boarding pass, and the name on the boarding pass was Christina Tina. So she now realized that, I don't know if you've ever run up to this. I can get into the story of my wife one time, but if your name doesn't match your ID, you don't fly potentially. I mean, they may not notice, but so now she's in the car going to the airport, realizing she's got an invalid ticket. So she calls, let me get right who she talks to first. She calls her airline, and it turns out it was a partner sort of thing. So it was actually booked through another airline, and the person on the line is very politely going, "No, nothing I can do. You're going to have to buy a new ticket." She went to call the other airline and noticed that there was a chance for digital. So,
Ah,
being who she is, she went ahead and tried the digital, uh, and it was a bot, and the bot was a total waste of time. Nothing useful or interesting with the bot, but they did have a escalation to an agent. She escalates to an agent. The agent gets on and says, "Hi there, I'm going to help you. Let me check the history of your chat here." And she's kind of laughing. It's like, okay, well, there's not going to be much to gather from that. So she looks to that, and the first thing the agent says is, "Oh, your boarding pass is in the name of Christina Tina, and you're gonna need to contact your travel agent to fix that." She didn't book through a travel agent. So they so she talked them through a couple of times, and the agent said, "No, we can't fix this. We can't do anything about it." So now she's stuck with a boarding pass with a typo. I doubt it was hers, because this would have, you log in and your name gets carried forward.
not
um
to mention she probably knows her own family name by now.
yeah, probably. And she's not Rosanna Dana. She's not Christina Tina either. So it all ended up happily. However, she got to the airport. There wasn't very crowded in the airport, so she had plenty of time. She went up to the desk, and they were very gracious there, very helpful, and fixed everything, and off she went. She got to her conference. Life was good. But it just was a really painful, stupid, and frustrating thing to begin with.
Well, I can feel the pain through the story. Look, first thing, thanks a lot, Christina, for sharing that pain with us. Um, it one thing that kind of escaped me is how did she book in the first place? That was not direct, but that was not a travel agent. What was it, an OTA, or how did that get booked in the first place?
I think she went straight to the site. It sounds like she went to the site of the American carrier. And, even though one leg of it was on a Canadian airline, it was a code share sort of a situation.
Okay, so you're flying one airline with a ticket you purchased from another airline, and that's where. Okay, got
Yeah.
that. I've actually been in a similar situation for sure once with a train and got scared to end up in the same situation once with an airplane. It was the airplane that was actually easy. That was my second or third name. In French, we don't have middle name. We have first, second, and third first name. However weird that is. And there was a spelling mistake on the third one, I believe. No big deal, but enough to stress me out. And once I had it wrong on a train ticket, and it was really completely wrong. And I had to jump through the same kind of hoops you had to jump through to get it canceled, then buy a new ticket altogether and get a refund for the first one weeks later. And I can't remember, that was too long ago. I can't remember whether there was a typo on my end or a technical problem on their end, but ultimately, why do we even have to do that to start with? Why do we have to make it so...
I'm going to jump in with my wife's story real quick. Her name is Joy, and it ends with an E. And people have a tendency to assume that her name is Joyce and she forgot the C. So it gets corrected a lot to Joyce. We were going on an international trip and she had to renew her passport. Her passport came back wrong. So it was like 2-3 days before we were going. There was no time to do anything, or the only option to do about it would have been to schlep up to, the embassy, and it would have just been a nightmare. And that's what it looked like she was going to have to do until she looked at her plane ticket and realized they had made the same mistake. So she was perfectly fine.
Yeah, well, when everyone fucks it up, I guess you end up with good karma.
All together there.
So to that story, there are so many things here. We definitely need to talk a little bit about why the lack of flexibility. We definitely need to talk about middlemen, because that's exactly what's happening here.
Yes.
A middleman adding value and convenience until it does not, and it becomes just another obstacle. We could talk about how useful the chatbot has been with your friend here, which, I mean, at this point, haven't we not all experienced something similar, if not once, multiple times? Right, and then there might be another point around the difficulty of getting something fixed online versus actually talking to a human being face to face and getting it fixed in a few minutes, because of the empathy, I guess, you can communicate through voice discussion.
I think that's the biggest thing, and that to me is the biggest failing in all of this. She talked, in one case, I guess it was chat, but she had 2 live human interactions that were completely empathyless. It was just, no, you're stuck with a ticket. Sorry, too bad. It took getting to the airport and getting a human who could actually help. So to me, I mean, that speaks to how it should be, which is when you do get to a person, you do get stuff fixed like that. And troublingly, that just broke down in 2 separate contact centers.
Yeah, because it's really a lose-lose, right? Because from a customer perspective, obviously, if you've been speaking to two phone agents, one chatbot, one live chat agent, and you could not get through, you had to talk to a fifth person. Obviously, from an experience perspective, not good. But even for the company, that's a lose because you had to pay interactions with three human beings, the setup of an AI-based bot, plus the salary of a staff on the ground to actually fix a simple problem. You basically paid it 5 times. So from a company perspective, that's a complete failure as well. So that's typically the type of situation where you wonder, how is that even possible? How is no one trying to fix this to start with?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that, there's the silos between the companies, which makes sense, but you work both sides of it. So you would think one of the silos would have been able to take care of the problem. Um,
Not my
I
job.
yeah, exactly. A horrible example of that. I think security is a piece to talk about here. I get inquiries. I had an interesting one with a company where they're trying to automate some things. And one of the obvious things to automate would be password reset. But they have so many security concerns that they just can't figure out how to do it. And, I that's one I really struggle with because part of me is just the importance of convenience and doing something as straightforward as a password reset. Come on, there's got to be a way to do it. But boy, do I respect
Well,
the concern.
so here I've been struggling with this for a while. I have a bunch of theories around why you can't do it. I don't believe that's by pure laziness. I believe it's closer to security. I actually don't believe it's because you could impersonate someone else. My personal theory, which may be completely wrong, is that airlines or transportation in general may be concerned that by allowing you to change the name, you may be buying a bunch of tickets in advance to resell it at a higher price on a side market closer to the date, and then just change the ticket's name to be able to make profit out of it. And the fact that we don't allow you to change a ticket's name would prevent this kind of behavior that would be counterproductive. That's my theory, which may be wrong, because I can't see any reasonable reason to refuse that people would change the name on their ticket because there is a spelling mistake, especially if that's a sufficient reason to forbid them to board the plane when they get to the airport.
Yeah. And, this is a silly example, right? Christina Tina. I mean, this is an obvious typo. If, you know, what if it had come up with something that didn't even, what if it was Jim Smith or something like that on the ticket? I mean, now you're getting into very sophisticated where and how do I draw that line sort of questions. And that, fortunately she found a real human who could look at this one and go, oh, okay, yes, I can tell this was just a silly typo. But, that I can see where as an airline, it makes a lot of sense to just have a hard and fast and simple rule because otherwise, what a slippery slope you're falling down at that point.
It does, if you buy apples and the whole thing cost you $3 and you've lost that $3 and you're gonna have to buy new apples, be it. When we're talking about plane tickets, very often we're talking, if not a few thousand, at least a few $100 each time. Not everyone travels for business. In that case, that was for a conference, that was business travel, a company was paying. Not that it's necessarily any better, but it's always easier for a company than your personal finances. If you're investing your money in some nice holiday and a trip ticket, and then you gotta go through that nightmare of potentially having to buy a brand new ticket, that is terrible. That sucks entirely. So, yes, I understand the security, I understand the concerns, I understand the processes, but ultimately, from a customer experience perspective, that is just a nightmare. That is the exact opposite that you should be experiencing. So there must be a way to fix that. And with everything automation and AI, we have more and more the concern of not being able to have a human judgment. If it fits criteria A, B, C, it falls in bucket 1. If it fits other criteria, it falls in bucket 2. When you start automating things, you can't add empathy to it. But there are situations where empathy is necessary, and apparently people on the ground, the staff on the ground, was showing more empathy than any of those
Right.
online or chatbot or over phone conversations.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And, I'm sure it wasn't the agent who was non-empathetic, although the way Christina described it, it wasn't a warm, gosh, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. It was a pretty strong, no, sorry, you're out of luck kind of attitude. But, we've talked about this a lot. It isn't necessarily the agent, it's the rules. And the agent is going to get fired if they break the rules, so they're stuck.
And that's what I feel frustrated with very often. Maybe one company out of 2 will send me after each interaction a survey to fill. And I guarantee that pretty much every time I get this survey and I get to fill it, I'm very disappointed with the question they ask because it's not giving me a chance to tell them what's wrong with the experience I got. They ask random stuff that I'm not even sure they're going to leverage at some point. But ask me clearly, how many times did I have to contact your company to fix my problem? Ask me about first contact resolution, whether my problem was fixed. Then I can tell you I've contacted 5 people before fixing it. Ask me how many channels I've used, and I can tell you I had to be on the phone. They sent me to a chatbot, who sends me to a human, who sends me to the ground staff. This is a kind of question you should be asking me. He said, I can help you figure out what your problems are and then fix them. And either you don't have a survey or you don't.
And this is worse than that because nobody got sent anywhere. She had to, of her own accord, just go on to the next attempt. I guess the one airline sent to the other airline. But other than that, it was completely, we're dragging you through the mud here.
And you're right. There's one point we kind of overlooked in our discussion, which is the middleman. Again, I'm wondering if the experience would have been really different if she went through one airline doing both the booking and the transportation, or whether actually rules being rules, it did not have much of an impact.
That's a very fair point. It may be given that both airlines rejected, she got the same result from both. You're probably right. You're probably the only thing that could have fixed that was going there. And you alluded to this through a couple of little points you made. If you've got a book that day, oh my gosh, what an expensive ticket that's likely to be.
Exactly. And we had a discussion late December last year, I believe. That was an experience I had where I think I purchased a photo book or a book for my kid. I can't remember what it was. And then I wanted it resent because I sent it the first time, and weeks later I still did not receive it. And basically the story was that they asked me to pay a little effort to get it, which was not that big, but still big enough that I had to write a letter by hand, take a photo of it, sign it, take a photo of it, send it to them. As simple as this. But the fact that they forced me to pay that little effort to show that that I had good faith, it's probably what should be happening here. Meaning, if you really don't want people to scam you and use it as a loophole to be able to sell tickets, assuming that's the security reasons that's behind this crazy process, make it a little bit difficult. Don't make it impossible. Make people prove that they really need to make the change, but don't make it impossible or a nightmare to get shit done. That's just the wrong approach.
And there's a lot of, when you book a flight, you give your address, you give your phone number, they've got 5 or 6 pieces of information that they could use to security check with her. And I guess at that point, if it breaks down, then I don't feel very sympathetic for you, Tina, but that's not what happened here at all.
I agree. I think you and I, and Christina obviously, have just fixed the entire airline industry today. So let's see what industry we could tackle next week. Thank you again so much, Christina, for sharing your story, and Max for being such a good comedian to make it live. And I hope she'll feel any better with what we came up with today.
Well, I hope so. That'll be a fun part of this. I'll get some feedback and we can share that and kick it around as well. There may be some clarifications she's going to want to make.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much to the both of you. And Max, I will definitely talk to you next week. Thanks again.
Sounds great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.